thanks to all of you who are here. I know that this is the end of the semester, everybody is very busy. We are going to start these ECO-SOS Doctorials, which, as you probably already know, is an activity designed to help our PhD students to present their works in progress on their doctoral thesis. Today we will start with a short presentation by Clara Chedid, our PhD student. She will explain the idea of a chapter in progress of her thesis. Then we will have 3 standard presentations where 3 more students will explain a chapter of their thesis with more details. And after that we will take a short break to have a coffee together. And we will continue with 2 more presentations. As we have been doing in the last sessions, all the presentations will have a senior professor assigned to each talk to make a short comment or question about the presentation. I want to thank all the professors who have agreed to participate, and in particular today, I would like to welcome the 3 new members of the ECO-SOS, David, Brenda, and Carlos. Welcome. To finish, we will have a presentation to Professor Ferran Mañé, a senior researcher at the ECO-SOS Center, will make the last talk. Again, many thanks to all who are here and the ones who are online. And we will start with the first presentation. Jose Maria will do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Cory. Well, we have our first presentation by Clara Chedid. I think, Clara, you are online. If you could share your screen and open your camera. Hello.
Good morning.
If you want to share your screen.
Yes, I'm sharing it. Okay. So, is it working? You can see it?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
put that in full screen mode.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So you have 10 minutes, please.
Alright. So, good morning. My name is Clara Chedid. I am a PhD student, and I am gonna be presenting very briefly our second chapter, which is still under construction, of course. And this thesis is being supervised by Professor Mercedes and Professor Montserrat. I thank you for their help and all the work we have been doing. So this chapter will be talking about the impact of the Belt and Road Initiative on financial inclusion of partner countries. To briefly introduce, our main objective is to check whether joining the Belt and Road will affect the financial inclusion of partner countries. And we also try to test whether the macroeconomic conditions of each country will overshadow the impact of BRI on financial inclusion, or will moderate the impact of BRI. So first, we would like to show that there is a big difference between financial development and financial inclusion, even though they are interconnected, but they are not the same. Financial development is how developed are financial institutions and how efficient are financial market and how well they are regulated. However, financial inclusion is the extent to which people have access to financial institutions and financial services and how well they utilize these services. As well, specifically, it is how disadvantaged population have access to financial services. Then we will look at the BRI. What is the BRI very briefly? Of course, it is more than this, but we will briefly talk about it. It is an initiative that was initiated by China in order to try to expand the Chinese investment along to Europe and East Asia. As well, it is used as a way to provide or to finance infrastructure projects in the BRI partners. The BRI is divided into 2 parts, main parts. The belt part and the road part. The belt part is a land-based venture, while the road part is a maritime connection. Of course, the BRI was criticized in many ways, especially regarding that sustainability challenges that partner countries are facing. Then we will look at the BRI's role in financial inclusion. Some studies, they show that there is a positive impact of joining the BRI on financial inclusion, especially that BRI provides the means, especially on the level of infrastructure. However, other studies, they say even though there is provision of infrastructure, still the macroeconomic conditions, they are the ones who affect the level of financial inclusion. So, in order to, based on all of this, we have built two hypotheses. The first one, it is that joining the BRI leads to increased financial inclusion of BRI partners. And the second one, macroeconomic conditions, that I'm going to talk about them later on, what are the variables used, they moderate the impact of BRI on financial inclusion. So the methodology and the data used, we have 145 BRI countries. We looked at the variables pre and post BRI. So in total, we have 2,500, approximately 2,500 observations, and the data was extracted from World Bank, IMF, and OECD. The data used are the following. Till now, we're still working on the data that we are going to be using. So we are going to use the as a proxy. We have the
Sorry, one second, please. It seems that there is one problem. Merche, if you have your microphone. Okay, now.
Okay. So we have used the bank branches for hundreds of thousands of adults to get the proxy for penetration, financial services penetration. Borrowers and deposit accounts for credit and savings.
Sorry, Clara. It seems that there is some kind of technical problem.
Alright.
What about now? Yes.
She cannot hear you.
If you can, one second.
Si vas
Okay, I can proceed.
y montellas a la mente.
Non ci può accidenti. No, ci può. Matches.
One minute.
If you try now.
Alright, so we use the life insurance premiums as risk management proxy. So those are the financial inclusion data and variables, and the variables for macroeconomics are GDP per capita, inflation rate, school primary enrollment, unemployment rate, population growth, and rate percentage of GDP. Of course, the variables that are not ratios, we have transformed them into natural logarithms. In order to test our hypothesis, we have used, actually it's not yet implemented, it's just a preliminary work. We have decided on using the staggered DID. However, as recently I did not share this idea with the supervisors, but I was just researching briefly. We can as well use the all regression for event study, but this depends on many things that will be discussed later on. So for now, we will be using the staggered DID because it captures the impact of joining the BRI in different timing, because each country is joining the BRI in a different year. So they are not all joining the BRI at the same time. So this is the staggered DID can capture this effect. And the results are very, very preliminary results. So I'm just going to share them are available for people. I have done as well this preliminary result on the countries after dividing them into two income levels, upper and high income levels, and low and medium income levels. And I saw different variation in the results. And surprisingly, the upper income level, they show more significant results than low income levels. This could be due to the more development of infrastructure and more development of financial services. However, it's very important to look at the robust local policies, related infrastructure and jobs. So to conclude, I promises to provide increased financial inclusion and regional integration. However, the macroeconomic dependencies based on the preliminary results, they show that they moderate this impact and they overshadow the impact of BRI, which means that macroeconomic variables related to each country, they are the ones who mainly affect financial inclusion. Till now, of course, this might change whenever we go deeply in the details of this chapter. For future directions, future researchers could explore the digital financial role in enhancing inclusion. We should not take it into account for this time because there is not enough information, not enough data available that we are able to take it within our range of variables. But later on, of course, this is a very important concept to look at. The digital, the online banking are things that will affect the financial inclusion and will for sure have an impact on financial inclusion. So thank you. Of course, I am trying to present this chapter even though it's still under construction to get all the feedbacks that will help us in improving the work or maybe new ideas that can be included later on in this chapter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clara. There is a discussion by José Manuel Jiménez, so please.
The microphone is on silent, so she cannot hear you. No,
Thank you, Clara. There is a discussion by José Manuel.
Yes.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you turn off your micro, please, class?
Yes.
No, el son. Si tienes aquí el altavoz, el portátil, eso es el servicio a comprar. A ver, eso. Now you can turn on your micro, please, Clara, and we can check.
Yes, no.
Now it's working. Okay. Thank you. So as you may know, I'm not an expert. I would say that I'm a totally outsider of the field, but just from my side, some curiosities I have, I want to share with you. Briefly, you have two hypotheses. One is on the impact of joining BRI on financial inclusion is clearly stated, and the second one evaluate the macroeconomic effects. A question that for sure you are going to see, and you are talking in the last slide for future research is, but maybe you have now one expectation about that is, what do you expect about what the paper may conclude about the role of this BRI in promoting financial inclusion in middle and low income countries compared with upper and high income countries? I don't know if you have thought about it, you have some insight.
Yes, this is what I said at the end. I have divided the countries into two income groups, and we will be looking at the results based on these income groups. So till now we have some variation, with high income groups having more significant results than low and middle income groups.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, why is that? If you think about the reason. for obtaining this
Because-
difference, I mean?
Because the RRI mainly provides the support to countries through investing in infrastructure. So, and infrastructure plays an important role in in financial inclusion. That's why I thought of dividing the countries into two different income groups. And I thought as well of dividing them based on the areas, maybe sub-Saharan countries with Middle Eastern countries, and I didn't do it yet, but I was thinking about it as well.
Okay, thank you. Considering this, you have any policy recommendation in that sense to try to strengthen this effect of the BRI?
You mean specific policies regarding to each country?
Yeah, I mean, you have make a preliminary study about how this BRI is affecting some microeconomics of the country, right? And you observe some different depending on countries.
Yes, yes.
So, in view of this result, if you are my consultant, you can make me some policy recommendation trying to facilitate this positive impact in my country, for instance.
Yes, maybe increasing spending on financial services or moderating the provision of loans, credits. So this can be part, like monetary policies that can be implemented in this case.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Financial inclusion.
Right. Okay, finally some maybe suggestion. I would recommend to highlight a specific BRI project in the paper, just to reflect the importance of this project. I would use just one specific example. And while the paper mentions some risk, like unsustainable debt, maybe
Yes.
you can make also more emphasis on criticism or counterpoints. We provide a balanced perspective. I mean, just not focus on the debt, but also to other aspects that would reinforce your storytelling, let's say, your
Yes,
motivation.
The first chapter, it is a case study about the issue of debts related to BRI and the Chinese financial institution. So yes, of course, this is a very good idea. Thank you. I will take it into consideration.
And finally, I think that this future line you mentioned here about digital financial services is the line. I mean, obviously, for sure, this has a positive impact in the implementation of this kind of. So I think that.
There is not enough data. I tried to integrate it into my study, but the World Bank did not yet provide enough data for enough years. So it started in 2013, which is the beginning of the BRI, and we need it before this, because BRI was initiated in 2013, so we need some data before 2013, which is not available.
Okay. So thank you again, Clara.
So
Good job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Checho. Any other comment from the room or online? No, just a final comment regarding one of the comments that was raised by Checho. Well, I put, given or taking into account the heterogeneity of countries you are dealing with in your data set, would avoid having the same kind of policy recommendations for all of them. So as you have very different profiles, so I suggest as well that these policy recommendations to tailor them in order to better adapt to these, let's say, very huge differences that you have in terms of countries and their characteristics and income levels and so on.
All right. Thank you so much for the interference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Sorry for the technical issues during your presentation. Let's move to the second presentation by Cristi Goyal, who is here. Goods and Bads in International Trade, a New Approach. If you want to upload, yeah, you have the computer there.
Goods and services are traded. However, this money pays not only for the goods that we think that it is trading, but also for the bads that are produced in the production of these goods and services. Present studies either quantify the economic gains of such a trade, or they quantify, for instance, the emissions embodied in such a trade. However, it is not certain whether these goods outweigh the bads or whether the bads outweigh the goods. In other words, if the environmental cost cancels out or even exceeds the economic benefits. So our objective is therefore to create a metric that not only quantifies but also balances the economic gains against environmental losses in trade. This metric will help eliminate areas where current policies may be underestimating the environmental impacts, thus guiding us towards more sustainable trade frameworks. We use hypothetical extraction method. This approach removes a specific sector from the global economy to evaluate the impact of goods and emissions across the economy, which is attributed as the keyness of the sector. We first estimate the benchmark using the multi-regional input-output model for goods, or environmentally extended multi-regional input-output model for BATs. And then we quantify the contribution of each sector by comparing the economy before and after the removal of sector for both goods and BATs. And this is done for each sector of the economy. We use the output of the HEM to calculate three matrices. The first is sectoral trade openness ratio, which basically measures how integrated a sector is in the global economy. And then there is emission trade openness ratio, which measures how open are the emissions of this trade. And then emission balance of trade, which evaluates whether sector trade more in goods or bads, where a value less than 1 indicates that the sector is environmentally sustainable in trade, and a value greater than 1 indicate that the trade of the sector is emission intensive. For our analysis, we have used data from the OECD Intercountry Input-Output Database, which covers 45 sectors across 66 countries and the rest of the world. And we have used emission data from the Trade and Embodied CO2 database. Moving on to the results, we have used heat maps to visualize the data across sectors and countries. Here you will notice that on the horizontal axis we have the sectors from X1 to X5, so basically till here these are the primary sectors. From X6, that's from here to 25, about here, these are the secondary sectors, and from X26 to X44, that's tertiary sector, that is the services sectors. And on the vertical axis we have the countries. You will notice that trade openness ratio is higher for primary and secondary sectors, showing that these sectors are more integrated in the global economy. Similarly, when we talk about the emission trade openness ratio, it follows the same trend, as it is also high for primary and secondary sectors. However, when we talk about the emission balance of trade, we notice that the services sector has high emission intensity, which can be gathered from the high concentration of the yellows and reds towards the right of this heat map. So our findings basically reveal that the primary and secondary sector, though they contribute substantially to emissions in trade, the services sector is actually high in emission intensity of trade. Now, looking at the country level analysis, we see that the larger economies, though they are globally integrated, however, they are in blue color, which means that their trade openness ratio is less than 1, which basically means that their production level is more than their trade, which is also a limitation of trade openness ratio, that it cannot be used as a comparable metric across countries, because these smaller economies tend to have higher value for trade openness ratio, as their production tends to be less than their trade. Then we look at the emission trade openness ratio, where we see most of the Europe and Canada is showing high values for emission trade openness ratio. However, when we move to emission balance of trade, we see that most of the world is actually engaging in emission intensive trade. However, we notice that countries like India and China are surprisingly environmentally sustainable when it comes to trade, which basically means that their emission openness is less than their trade openness of goods. So our key takeaways include that the services are highly emission intensive in trade, and perhaps it would be prudent to include services under the carbon adjusted border mechanism. We have defined a nuanced matrix in the form of emission balance of trade that overcomes the limitation of trade openness ratio, as it is comparable across countries and time. And it also informs about the disparity in emission intensity across sectors and countries to formulate policies for sustainable trade practices. We may consider using this matrix, the EBD matrix, to adjust CBAM rates, as it also indicates the ineffectiveness of carbon prices in sectors and countries with high values for EBD. Finally, one can extend the study further by doing a temporal analysis to see how EBD changes over time for a country or a sector, and this framework could be further developed to evaluate the efficiency of trade in terms of other environmental impacts such as greenhouse gas emissions or water usage, among others. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Christine. You had plenty of time, so we won't talk much. something. But anyway, we have now a discussion by David, and then we, as you prefer.
It helps us more.
Can I put the slides? Exit from the website.
No, you have to go to the other keyboard. Not this one, the one inside.
Oh, okay.
There's a
Sorry, but
mouse
this is
there.
not working.
Okay, perfect. They're shared already, or can you see the slides?
No, you have to share it. No.
But it should be shared. No, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
perfect. Okay, sorry for the delay with the slides. Well, thank you so much for the presentation and organizers for the opportunity to discuss this paper. I learned a lot. So very small disclaimer, I have no previous knowledge about the methodology you are using. So it was very interesting for me to read, and I learned a lot. So yeah, my comments will be more on different things than the methodology, as you will see. So first of all, while reading the paper, I was struggling at some places. First of all, because it's not my methodology, but also I think there is still a lot of improvement, potential to improve the readability of the paper. So, for instance, just to give you one example, and we can talk about this later, I have a lot of notes written in the paper. It became to me clear what we are looking at. So, at emissions as bads and economic goods as goods on page 3. And I think it should be already somewhere in the abstract and introduction for sure. And also what I was wondering about is what is the contribution of the paper and what is the advantage of using exactly your methodology. So this was not clear for me reading the paper. So you mentioned this at some points in different parts of the paper, but I was not entirely sure what can be attributed to the paper and what you just discussed at some other places. So it was not clear for me what's the contribution of the paper. And I think you have to make it very clear in the introduction what exactly is the contribution, what are the advantages of using your methodology, right? So at some point in the paper, I understood that the methodology, the input-output modeling, allows you to include both indirect and direct emissions. But it was somewhere on page 10 or something. So I think you should highlight this much more in the paper as a contribution, right? So also kind of explain why actually you're using exactly this methodology. Yeah, we can talk about this a bit later. So exactly, going back to the value added, it was not clear for me. I can send you later the slide, so don't worry. It was not sure for me, why we need this new matrix, why we need the EBT, and not just compare the store and ether, right? We could just compare them, both of them. So it was for me not clear, why we actually need this new matrix. And just looking at the definition of the new matrix that you provide, I was actually wondering why you simply divide the emissions trade openness ratio by sectoral trade openness ratio, and not, for instance, just the nominator from emissions trade openness ratio by the nominator in the sectoral trade openness ratio. I think it would be more straightforward, and you could then kind of do a decomposition.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Yes.
So basically, if we do that, then the whole point is that this matrix is unitless, right? Because if we do that, the trade openness ratio, the nominator for that would be in USD, right? And for the emissions, the nominator would be in million tons of CO2. So it will not be comparable even across time if you do it in the future. have to take inflation into account when you're doing, the cross time analysis sort of a thing. And yeah, majorly that.
Yeah, I understand. But, I mean, I think this is something that you should put in the introduction, right? Because this is kind of why you say.
I think I need to strengthen my introduction.
Yes, and I mean you discussed this in like one sentence somewhere what you mentioned right now, but I think it's not visible. I mean this is the justification why you need a new metrics, right? So I think this is something that you should really sell better in the paper. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of more comments. So first of all, it was not clear. Maybe it's because I'm outsider from the literature, and I don't know how common it is in the literature that you are working with to discuss some assumptions, because you don't do it in the paper at all. So for me, I was looking for it, like, okay, so what are the assumptions? Are they met or not? And also there were some missing subscripts in the paper, which was kind of making it hard to understand. I can show it in the paper.
Yes, please do that.
Yes, I have a lot of notes. I can show it later. And also I was wondering, why not use exports in value added? So I was thinking about this, if you could do the composition, for instance, of your measure. I'm not sure if you can do it with your current methodology, but I think it would be kind of helpful, in particular because you're looking at emissions, right? So emissions are not caused by the overall export, but really by the value added of export that is being produced in a given country. So theoretically, you could just look at exports in value added. We can.
I'm not understanding this, but yes, I just.
So there are different measures of exports, right? You could look at exports, total exports in dollars, let's say, but you could also look at the value added.
Yes, of course. Yes, I understand that, but I don't understand why you're saying that we can do that. How is it comparable?
We can talk about this.
What is the advantage of this?
Because then basically you compare the value added, so the actual production of your exports, to the emissions caused by that. Because right now I don't think that you can actually compare it very well. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not expert in the methodology.
Okay, so the idea is to, when in this methodology, I can speak for hypothetical extraction method. We cannot do that. We can do we can focus on exports and value added. We can probably do that. But the idea of using HEM is that you understand the keenness, everything that is associated with that one sector. So how relevant and how important is that sector? So you basically remove that sector from the economy, and then you see what is the changes that is happening in the economy because of the removal of this sector.
Yes, I understand that, but then you have entire exports, not only the exports from the sector in the specific country, right?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I don't understand. Okay, we can talk about this later if you want.
Yes.
So coming to some more comments, just 1-2 minutes. So basically, I was wondering about China, and actually what you mentioned right now, because you mentioned that China is the leading importer. So in the paper, that China is the leading importer in sectors as water transport and air transport. And I was directly struggling on that, thinking actually those sectors are kind of intermediary. They're used for production, I would think, for production of exports. So why you actually, it is somehow incorporated in the methodology that the sectors as water transport and air transport are later used for the production of exports or not. I was not clear. For me it was not clear. Maybe it's the methodology, but I don't understand. I did not understand it. So I think a nice footnote explaining it would be very, very nice, because it's kind of important point. And related to that, we're looking at this map, and I think you cannot see this from behind, but Ireland is super, super wrecked. And I was then thinking, okay, what in fact are you measuring? Because maybe the exports, coming back to to my point with value added, maybe the exports are kind of the measure of export is kind of a bit skewed because, for instance, Ireland has some tax advantages, so people just export and import there on paper, but not in the reality, which kind of would bias potentially the measure, right? Because you want to compare the export and imports to the emissions, but then in this case.
Okay, so I think it is important to understand that the contribution of this paper is not this. It is one of the methods, right? And it is the limitation of trade openness ratio that, for the smaller economies, it tends to show higher value. So it is coming from that aspect. It has nothing to do with exports, imports in general. It is just
think we have just found a new framing of your paper. So you could basically start with that, right? And then talk about, the student, and I mean, I would start with that basically as a framing. I mean, I think this is, we can talk about this later if you don't.
So the framing should be that this is not the contribution.
No, the framing is basically, so the contribution is that, so from, you had 2 maps, right? And then you made the third one, right? So you can say basically those first are wrong. I mean, they are different, they're not wrong, but they're different to interpret. They're different to interpret. They're different to interpret.
It is just that it is a limitation of trade openness ratio. So in the first 2 maps, I'm talking about trade openness ratio.
Yeah.
That is not my contribution. The contribution is that nobody has ever done this for sectors and for emission trade openness ratio. That is the contribution. However, if I just present like sectoral trade openness ratio or emission trade openness ratio,
Yeah.
anybody would come to me and say that this is wrong because these are the limitations of trade openness ratio, and I know that. And I say that my contribution is EPG, which takes these, but out of when we get that EPG matrix, eventually it overcomes the limitations of trade openness ratio, because we say that the main limitation of trade openness ratio is that in the denominator you have the production, right? And for the smaller countries, trade is generally more than the production. But for EBD, you have production of both in the, like,
Yeah.
for both the measures, you have production of both, so it kind of cancels out. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
But I understand your point is that the writing has to be better. I get that.
So just last point, and I actually mentioned this in the presentation already. It would be interesting to look at the dynamics of the effect, right? So preparing for the discussion, I found this paper. I don't know if this is relevant for you or not, but then it's using the input-output analysis, and it's actually showing you the dynamic of the. I mean, you're kind of looking in dynamic models of it. It's very well published and it's recent, so maybe it could be useful for you for that. Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much. And I can talk later about that.
Okay, thank you, David, for this detailed discussion. Any other comments, questions from the room? No?
Yes,
There.
I have just a comment maybe for highlighting a little more your contribution. Maybe your paper, I see that is related with international trade patterns and embodied CO2 trade between nations. So it's also, this could be related with the pollutant heaven hypothesis, and also with the carbon leakage theory. So maybe you can use your data and maybe try to link the pollutant heaven hypothesis, and maybe you can link your findings with the policy decisions in different environmental policy in different jurisdictions. It's just a
Yeah,
comment.
that's actually interesting. It might enrich the discussion. Like if I read some literature on this, and then I can probably add this in the discussion if something of relevance comes out of it. That's really nice. Thank you.
And also, what about this, let's say, the limitations of this hypothetical extraction method, about your assumptions that what happens if one sector disappears? So, because about that you may imagine that there is some kind of technical change, because you have to replace in some way what has been produced there, or so which is the effect over the rest of activities if suddenly one activity disappears, and then you have to counterbalance that in some ways.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but it is about the method, but I'm talking about, let's say, the general approach, the general
So
view
my
of that.
understanding of what I'm doing is that we are trying to make a metric, right? It is not trying to understand that if we remove a sector, then what is happening to the rest of the economy. Yes, we are removing a sector, but we are trying to understand what is the importance of that sector. Like if I remove the sector, actually services are more emission intensive in terms of trade. Although the services sectors are not so integrated as the secondary or the primary sectors are, but they are emission intensive in terms of trade. That is what we are saying. But I understand what you are talking about, that basically comes to back to that I need to make the assumptions clear that what I'm doing, and yeah, I need to just refine them a little bit.
Yeah, that's it. Deep is an hypothetical exercise at the end.
Yes. Yes, it is basically like constructing a matrix to help you formulate policies to identify the sectors which are more emission intensive, because on the face of it we do not really see these things. But yes, I need to write it better. Thank you so
No
much.
worries. Thank you very much, Christine. Okay, let's move to the, we are perfectly on time. So now we have the next presentation is by Paula Quiroz, Driving Innovation, Analysis of Public Financing Determinants in Chilean Companies, but I don't see Paula online.
I'm ready here in the WhatsApp.
Okay. So just wait a couple of minutes till Paula is ready to connect. So are you contacting her? Okay. Problem we could switch to the paper by Mira, who is online as well. So let's wait a couple.
We can switch if you want. It's not answering. I don't know if there is some kind of misunderstanding for the.
About the time lag. Okay, so Mira, as you are there, are you ready to present? If we move your presentation to now?
Yes, hello, yes I am. I'm here.
Okay, so as we are here and the discussant Carlos is also here, so we could move, change the order. So if you can share your screen and open your camera, you have around 20 minutes.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay.
If you can put it in a full screen mode, please, that will be easier.
Is it like this? Does it work?
Well, bigger than this because it's a little bit small. Well, it's fine like this. Yeah. It's fine. No, now we cannot see the screen.
I stop. I'm not sure if now it's better.
Not yet, but okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Mira Khalili, and I'm a second-year PhD student. I'm supervised by Professor Mercedes and Professor Monica. So today I'll be presenting the first chapter, and it's about analysis of the linkages between power supply and firm growth in the MENA region. So this topic is particularly important because electricity is critical vital input for economic activity, and yet power outages remain a persistent challenge in developing regions, often hindering firm performance and overall economic growth. So I will cover the following points. First, the introduction, and then the theoretical and empirical literature. Then I'll move to the data and the methodology, followed by the key findings, and finally policy implications and concluding remarks. So electricity plays a crucial role in driving economic development, serving as a key input in production processes. However, in many developing countries, unreliable electricity infrastructure, often characterized by frequent power outages, poses a significant constraint for firms. So in the Middle East and North Africa, which is the MENA region, power outages are more extensive compared to many other geographic and economic regions. Disruptions in power supply have been closely linked to reduced firm performance, impacting productivity and firm growth. There are several studies that have demonstrated that power outages influence firm performance, which results in higher economic costs and lower production output, and ultimately declines in sales and productivity. There's another important aspect to consider, which is the specific impact of power outages on firm level growth. Analyzing the heterogeneous impact of firm growth is relevant because the influence of power outages on the firm performance is not uniform across all firms. So moving to the objectives and contributions, this paper explores the relationship between power supply and firm growth, and it examines the unequal influence of power outages across the firm distribution. So it contributes to the empirical understanding of how power outages specifically affect firm performance in the MENA region through capturing the heterogeneous effects of power outages across firms with different growth levels. So with that context, let's dive into the motivation behind this research and why this topic deserves attention. So our motivation lies in addressing a pressing regional challenge, advancing academic understanding, and it's contributing to evidence-based policy making to support sustainable firm growth in the face of infrastructure limitations. So to start with the literature review, it's divided into 4 parts. In this part, we'll explore the relation between power outages and firm performance. We're going to examine their incidence on sales, on labor employment and productivity, and mainly on firm growth. To start with sales, power outages have direct and indirect consequences on firm operations, which ultimately lead to significant losses in sales. Here we have Foster and Steinbach in 2009. They explored that power outages not only lead to direct sales losses, but they also contribute to damaged equipment, compounding operational challenges and revenue deficits. For Frederick and Josephine in 2016, they analyzed that power outages and profitability are negatively correlated, particularly in the northern region where power supply issues are more pronounced. And for Osei, Ghiabi, and Ramani in 2023, they demonstrated that the frequency and duration of power outages, they significantly diminished sales. And here comes our first hypothesis that power outages have on average a negative relation with sales. So moving on to the second factor, which is the incidence of power outage on employment. Power outages can significantly diminish the growth prospects of firms by disrupting their operations, which in turn leads to reduced employment growth. Beyond firms, reliable electricity plays a crucial role in shaping the broader ecosystem that supports economic growth and employment. For example, in households, access to electricity supports education and training that enables individuals to acquire the skills needed for employment. Also, improved living standards through the reliable power supply contribute to human capital development, which improve or which benefits firms by creating more skilled and productive workforce. Also, in the social services sector, electricity enhances the quality of education and health care, which are essential for fostering human capital accumulation and strengthening employment prospects. So this interconnected relationship underscores how reliable electricity indirectly boosts firm growth and employment by creating more skilled labor and healthier work population. And this was examined by Blimpo and Davies in 2019. As a result, power outages not only constrain firms' growth, but it also threaten the stability of existing employment as firms struggle to sustain productivity and profitability. And this link was highlighted by Adolfo in 2020. Finally, Mensah in 2024, he showed that the power outage in Africa has a considerable adverse impact on employment. Like these outages hinder the establishment of new firms, leading to reduced job creation opportunities, and especially in skilled employment and non-agricultural sectors. So given this, our second hypothesis is the following. Power outage has on average a negative relation to employment growth. The third one is the incidence of power outage on labor productivity. So power outages disrupt production processes, affecting firms but also consumers and the workforce in multiple interconnected ways. So for instance, perishable goods often deteriorate during prolonged power outages, leading to their spoilage. So these outages also lead to damaging machinery and equipment, besides adversely or negatively affecting productivity and labor force efficiency. So this was examined by several researchers. Also, for Chaudhary et al. In 2021, he conducted an investigation and he revealed a positive correlation between electricity access and SMEs' labor productivity. A more recent research by Kebzik in 2022, he found that power outage is identified as a significant barrier to productivity for firms in East Africa. So this is our third hypothesis. It says that a power outage has on average a negative association with labor productivity growth. The fourth part, which is represents the bulk of our paper, is the incidence of power outage on firm growth. So here the literature analyzing the firm growth shows heterogeneous factors affecting the growth rate when firms are in the market. So as a result, low and high growth firms have different factors such as firm size, age, sector, internationalization, and the availability of financial and slack resources. So all these characteristics, they play a crucial role in explaining firm growth and how firms will be differently equipped to face external shocks such as power outages. So here, like for low growth firms, they're characterized by being large, older, financially constrained, they have greater access to slack resources. And for high growth firms, they are smaller, younger, they have knowledge-intensive sectors, highly internationalized, stronger access to financial resources, and less access to staff resources. So, since high growth firms may have capacity to adapt to external shocks, we expect that they will be able to be less affected by the power outages than low growth firms. So this is our fourth hypothesis, that higher growth firms are less likely to be associated with power outages than small growth firms. So moving to our data, to test these hypotheses, firm level data from the World Bank's enterprise surveys was used.
The data set used in this paper, after being filtered, it includes firms located in 12 countries across the MENA region that are Djibouti, Egypt, Iraq, occupied Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, Malta, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, Gaza, and Yemen, totaling 6,741 observations. So for the variables, here our dependent variables are the percentage of real annual sales growth, percentage of annual employment, and annual labor productivity, all in percentages. And for the explanatory variables, we have two types. The main part is our key variables, which is the infrastructure, and it includes, or it's measured by the total hours of power outage per month, which is logarithmic. Losses due to electrical outages, which is also logarithmic variable. And the third one, that's a dummy variable, that's firms identifying electricity as a major constraint. As for other explanatory variables, we have trade, and it's measured by experts, firm characteristics, by firm age, workforce, like by firm size, and the last one is innovations and technology, which is measured by firms that introduced new or significantly improved products, process innovations, and research and development activities. So the following table presents mean tests of the key independent variables according to countries. The statistics reveal a positive average for all variables across the MENA region. Basically, firms in Lebanon, as we can notice, they have the largest average of power outages, whereas firms in Yemen have the highest average of losses due to electrical outages, and Iraq has the highest average of firms identifying electricity as a major constraint. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia has the lowest average of power outages, with occupied Palestine having the lowest averages for both losses due to electrical outages and firms identifying electricity as a major constraint. So to examine the association between power outage and firm growth, we estimated the following equation. So here's our model, or our equation. Investigating the firm growth distribution using the three dependent variables reveals that the distribution deviates from normality, from the normal distribution, the symmetrical one. So as shown here in the figures, so this is a kernel density. So the kernel density plot here, it indicates that the distributions of sales growth, employment growth, and labor productivity growth are not normally distributed. And this deviation from normality has like significant implications, where it suggests that the firm growth is heterogeneous, with some firms experiencing rapid growth while others are declining. So as a result, the traditional methods like the OLS, the ordinary least squares method, that assumes normality distribution of the dependent variable, may not fully capture the variability in the data. So therefore, we are using a quantile regression. So moving to our result, here it shows the results of our estimations for each of our dependent variables. So to start, also okay. So in these figures, as we can see, it illustrates the relationship between the key variables, power outage, losses due to electrical outages, and firms identifying electricity as a major constraint. And our measures, so between these and our measures of growth across different quantiles. So the figures show that the impact of key variables is not homogeneous across various levels of firm growth, whether it's for sales or for employment, so it's not homogeneous, or for labor productivity. Specifically, there is a discernible pattern pattern where the independent variables exhibit an increasingly positive association with the high growth firms, while there's a negative association with low growth firms. So to go more in details, the estimation of the relationship between power outages and sales growth shows that power outage is negatively related to low growth firms of the distribution, and this indicates that firms experience slower growth, and of course those with the low growth rates, they are significantly related to power outages, which leads to reduced sale growth. And this suggests that power disruptions tend to worsen existing challenges for low growth firms, which may have fewer resources to adapt the impact of power outages, power shortages. Conversely, power outages have a positive association with the upper end of the distribution, and this suggests that the firms with high growth rates may actually benefit from power outages in terms of sales growth. And these are in line with the findings we mentioned in the literature review. So again, to restate that the power outages have a detrimental association with annual average sales growth. Losses due to power outages have a negative impact on sales growth rate, and firms that identify electricity as a constraint on their operations exhibit a negative relationship with firm performance. So here our first hypothesis is confirmed. For the employment growth, firms identifying electricity as a constraint, they exert a downward pressure on the employment growth, indicating a negative relation on average with firm growth. And these results are in line with the findings by Atherido et al. In 2007, Adolfo, Faqih et al. And Mensah, and here our second hypothesis is also confirmed. Moving to the third, which is labor productivity growth, we found that power outages are negatively associated with labor productivity growth, which is in line with findings by Kasike and Hosting in 2015 and Moyo in 2013. Losses incurred due to the electrical outages show a negative link with productivity growth, and this is also consistent. And surprisingly, there's a positive association between firms identifying electricity as a constraint and labor productivity growth, and this is in contrast with our earlier findings. Therefore, hypothesis 3 it's partially supported. So going back to the heterogeneous behavior of firm growth, as I mentioned earlier, that these figures prove or shows that the variables or the heterogeneous, the key variables are not homogeneous across the various levels of firm growth. The pattern is increasingly positive at the high growth firm, and although whereas it's negative for low growth or low level firms. Yes. So here for this behavior, we said that there's a discernible pattern where the independent variables exhibit an increasingly positive association, as we said. So here the estimation of relationship between power outage and sale growth shows that power outage is negatively related to low growth firms of the distribution and positively to high growth firms. Similarly, quantile regression analysis of the employment growth shows that for losses due to electrical outages, firms with higher growth rates experience a positive relation, but it's insignificant. This could imply that for high growth firms, the losses incurred during power outages may not significantly harm their employment growth, possibly because they can absorb or offset these losses through other mechanisms, such as the better use of labor during the non-disrupted hours or investments in infrastructure. In contrast, firms identifying electricity as a constraint is adversely related to employment growth overall. This finding suggests that firms which recognize electricity as a major constraint may face consistent challenges in maintaining their workforce or expanding their workforce, as they struggle to grow due to persistent operational difficulties linked to unreliable power supply. For example, these firms might delay or reduce their hiring plans as they cannot rely on consistent energy to support increased production or business activity. As for the labor productivity growth, power outage is associated with firms differently across the growth distribution. At the bottom of the distribution, where firms experience slower growth, power outages present a negative association resulting in reduced labor productivity growth. So for low growth firms, power outages result in inefficiencies that directly hinder their productivity levels. Conversely, at the upper end of the distribution, where firms have a higher growth rate, power outages surprisingly yield a positive relation with labor productivity, potentially benefiting these firms with a substantial increase in the labor productivity growth. So this suggests that higher growth firms may be able to turn power disruptions into an opportunity by investing in backup systems or enhancing their operational flexibility, leading to an increase in productivity growth. Now, when it comes to losses due to electrical outages, firms with low growth rates experience a negative link with labor productivity growth rate, and this supports the idea that the operational losses caused by power outages may harm firms that are already struggling to maintain high productivity levels. And so here, as a result, the study supports a hypothesis for that fact that high growth firms are less negatively associated with power outage than low growth firms. So the paper, to conclude, the paper examines how manufacturing firms in the MENA region responded to power shortages and
Power outages.
Yeah, I think we have a reduction in power supply there, in line with the paper. Are you still there? Can you hear us? Here?
sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay, yeah.
Did you reach with me the Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but
Yeah, no.
perhaps if you... yeah,
Where
please.
did I? Shall I continue for the conclusion?
Yeah, please continue, please.
Can you switch off the camera?
Yeah, if we switch off the camera,
So,
perhaps...
I was saying that this paper.
Amira, it seems that if you switch off the camera, we could hear you better, because now it's very difficult. Okay.
Okay, now is it better?
Yeah, now it's better. Sorry, but we cannot hear you.
Can you just give me 1 second? Try to fix my my connection. I don't know what's happening. Okay.
Now it's fine.
It's clear.
Now it's fine, it's clear.
Okay, so I continue. So this examines how manufacturing firms in the MENA region responded to power shortages and the unequal influence of power outages across firm distribution. It reveals a negative link between power outages and firm growth across different dimensions, and it shows a significant heterogeneity among firms' growth. So for low growth firms that are negatively affected by power outages and or highly affected by power outages, and for high growth firms who exhibit greater resilience to power outages. So at a policy level, our results emphasize the importance of enhancing power supply and reforming the energy sector in the MENA region. Also, improving infrastructure should therefore be complemented by regulations and affordable energy pricing to ensure that firms, especially the low growth firms, can contribute to broader growth. For low growth firms, it's crucial to prioritize cost-effective backup options and energy-efficient technologies. And high growth firms, on the other hand, should consider diversifying their energy sources and investing in advanced energy technologies to ensure reliability and support their expansion plans. As for further research, it could expand the geographical scope to include comparisons with regions experiencing different levels of energy access and infrastructure development. So one key area for further exploration is the integration of renewable energy sources such as solar or wind in improving energy efficiency and achieving cost savings. Also, the potential for renewable energy to reduce firms' reliance on unstable power grids should be examined in more depth. Another important avenue for the future research is the role of energy price policies in fostering green innovation. And thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mira. Now it's time for a discussion by Carlos. Could you stop sharing your screen, Mira?
Yeah. Okay, done.
Hello, Mira. Thank you for your paper and your presentation. I am surprised by the quality of your research. So, congratulations. I have a few comments. I share with you a brief report of my comments. Here I did a summary of the paper, but it's not relevant, so I will skip. I will explain a little more for the public, for the persons here, than for you, that because I share with you the report. The first was the coherence of the title. I see that you changed it in your presentation. My observation was that you talk in the original title, you talk about efficiency and would be, but efficiency, I think that it would be more suitable, a more general word like performance. also in the title you should mention the region in which you are applying and maybe trying to give signs that you are doing an empirical analysis. My second observations and a very important concern is about the endogeneity of the power outages, especially in the Middle East and North Africa region, because in these regions we have heterogeneity, a dynamic heterogeneity, especially related with political stability and conflict. So would be helpful if you can introduce some kind of variable that allow you to control for this heterogeneity. Also, you should mention in your paper the potential problems of endogeneity and try to address and explain why your methodology address these issues. Okay. My third comment was that you need a more complete justification for the using of quantile regression. You argue that you have you do not have that your outcome variables are not normally distributed, but you can use OLS even if you don't have if the sample is not a problem, you can use OLS. I think that you have very good reasons for using quantile regression, and the reason is that you have heterogeneity along your outcome variables. So I think that you have to explain that, and using theoretical arguments to say, hey, look, it's important to find and to describe the heterogeneity, and you have some insights of that in your paper. That is that, for example, that that a high growth firm are smaller and have more flexibility and this kind of thing. So you have to put more emphasis on that and to do a more clear justification for using quantile regression. Third point, I found the paper, this paper of Faki et al. 2020, and I think that you should do a clear comparison with this paper and try to highlight the differences with the paper and mention why your paper is better, because this paper also studies the same region, the same database, and also explores the nonlinearities between the firm performance and the power outage. So because and they do it in a different way. They use interactions. So you should be able to highlight these differences and to say why your paper is more is better. Okay, the next comment is regarding the interpretation of the quantile regression. I think that you I think that you included that in the slides. I see, in general, I see that you adopted or tried to include some of my comments in the slide. Thank you very much. I didn't want to put you pressure, but okay. And the thing with the interpretation of the control regression is that when you present your result, you put so much emphasis in the average finding, and I think that the most important contribution of your paper is finding the heterogeneity along the different levels of growth. So you have to present that and in a more comprehensive way, very in a more precise way, and show your conclusion. That is, I think that you obtain a different conclusion than the previous literature. And finally, maybe for further research, you may think in maybe exploring the different channels of the outage impact. With this, I mean that there are different channels in which the outage can affect the performance of the firms. For example, with the damage of equipment, or maybe with the interruption of a continuous process in a production chain, and so on. And I think that you have here, exploring these channels, an opportunity to improve significantly the paper. So that's are my comments. I don't expect that you can answer these comments very right now, of course. Just take it into account, and if you can do a general discussion about the comments, will be nice. So I also have other minor comments, but you have it in the report. So thank you very much, Mira, for your paper and your presentation. Congratulations.
Thank you for the comments and your feedback. Well, I can answer a few of your comments, and of course I'm going to take them into consideration, since as you know, it's still a working paper and we're still amending. So yeah, as you mentioned, for the title, we've already I amended it. For the indigeneity problem, usually it's particularly relevant in the context of time series analysis of causal processes. And in our case, the data here is cross-sectional. So basically, that's one of the reasons. And also here, the analysis focuses on the relationship rather than the causality, like the cause and effect matter. This is for, and as for the quantile regression, as we said that we're studying, or we're focusing on heterogeneity. So here we're studying or we're examining how the effect of outages varies across different levels of firm growth, like for different distributions. So that was the main reason we used the quantile regression, and I justified the usage of this regression through the or through non-normality. So we used the non-normality to prove or to justify using quantile regression. And for the other comments, I will take them into consideration, and I'm going to add more explanations. Thank you.
Okay, Mira, just thank you, and don't doubt to send me a corrected version, and I will be glad to give you more comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Carlos, for your nice discussion. And Mira, are there additional comments, questions in the room? I have one comment and one question, Mira. A very simple comment. Thank you, Carlos. Well, here you are analyzing which are the effects of these power outages, but from a policy perspective, you may perhaps take into account that well, the reasonable origin could be a lack of investment in energy infrastructures, but then perhaps it could be nice to explore whether the mix of energy sources in different countries may be part of the reason of that. So whether they're using coal, gas, whatever energy source, and then in addition to that, or continuing in this direction, whether in this current energy transition process, where an additional dependence on renewables may also or could generate, let's say, an increase in this kind of disruptions. So just a suggestion to consider to discuss that. And then a question which is about my geographical ignorance, because you have seen that in your table, the one you presented here, you had Gaza, you have the West Bank, and also you have occupied Palestine. And my question is exactly which geographical area is included in the occupied Palestine?
It's the occupied one you mean? It's now known as Israel. Yes, this is it.
Yeah, because you differentiate Gaza and the West Bank. So you have, let's say, these three areas just to put some kind of, let's say, a note in order to better identify the geographical jurisdiction you are referring to.
Okay. So you mean like to define what do I mean by occupied Palestine?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps you have in the paper, so I haven't read the paper, sorry.
Yeah, I'll add it.
Okay. Any more questions here? No. So thank you very much, Mira. So we'll go back to the previous paper by Paula. Are you here? Yeah.
Sí, aquí estoy.
Okay, so if you can, hello Paula. Paula is going to present the paper Driving Innovation Analysis of Public Financial Determinants in Chilean Companies. If you can share your screen, please.
Me tiene que dar la opción para poder compartir.
Sorry. Now should be okay.
Okay.
Okay, so maximum 20 minutes, please.
Ok, ¿se ve bien?
Yeah.
¿Ahí sí?
Yeah, yeah.
Ya. Buenos días, soy Paula Quiroz y mi profesora es Mercedes Teruel y les voy a comentar acerca de mi tercer artículo sobre las fuentes públicas de financiamiento para las empresas chilenas. Les voy a hablar con una introducción, la literatura, cuál es la metodología que se utiliza, los resultados y las principales conclusiones. El objetivo de este estudio es desarrollar un modelo trietápico donde se logren identificar cuáles son las características que tienen las empresas chilenas al solicitar ayudas públicas, cuáles son las variables que van a influir en la adjudicación de estos fondos públicos y finalmente cuáles son los factores relevantes para desarrollar los diversos tipos de innovación. Hoy en día existe una amplia gama de literatura que ha dado la importancia sobre el financiamiento público como una forma como un mecanismo clave para poder promover la promoción de la innovación y el desarrollo de la innovación en las organizaciones. Los gobiernos optan por utilizar ya sea subsidios, préstamos o impuestos u otra estrategia como fuente de financiamiento para poder promover este desarrollo de la innovación empresarial. Si bien existe una amplia literatura que respalda la importancia de la financiación pública, esta literatura no suele estar desglosada por tipo de innovación. Y esto dificulta poder identificar los factores que son determinantes, pero que sean específicos para cada tipo de innovación, incluida en este caso de estudio la innovación social, así como también identificar aquellos factores que influyen en la solicitud y en la concesión del financiamiento público. Respecto a la literatura en el artículo, separamos tres temáticas relevantes. En primer lugar, las fuentes de financiación de la innovación, que ahí nosotros dividimos la financiación interna, la financiación externa. En la financiación interna se habla acerca de los beneficios o la obtención de un nuevo capital propio. La financiación externa, la búsqueda de fuentes de inversión fuera de la organización, se hace distinto análisis, la revisión de la literatura. Posteriormente, ya se hace un análisis de las políticas gubernamentales para el desarrollo de la innovación, ya sean los tipos de subsidios, los préstamos o los impuestos también como fuente de financiación. Y finalmente ya nos centramos en la financiación pública, pero en la promoción de innovación en Chile, que es mi país. Y ahí nosotros nos damos cuenta de que la literatura existente más escasa, que invertir en innovación es un desafío que es más crítico en países cuya economía, que en el caso de la chilena, depende en gran medida de la explotación de los recursos naturales. La fuente de financiación pública que se utiliza para el estudio tiene que ver con el financiamiento público que Chile ha destinado en torno a la innovación. Y en ese sentido nosotros podemos ver financiamiento que está asociado a fuentes particulares de innovación y desarrollo de la empresa como Scorfo, con ICIP más asociado a investigación, desarrollo, innovación, centrado principalmente en universidades, organizaciones, fundaciones de investigación, etc. Fuente asociada a la innovación agraria, apoyo, Cercotec, que apoya a las organizaciones y asistencia técnica a organizaciones de menor escala. ProChile, que también trabaja la internacionalización, y Fondo de Innovación de la Agricultura. Y ahí nos podemos dar cuenta que el porcentaje de adjudicación cuando se postula estos distintos tipos de financiamiento público en general está por sobre el 50% y llegando inclusive al 76%, 75% del organismo de Corfo y Cercotec. La base de datos que se utiliza es la encuesta de innovación, que es desarrollada por el Ministerio de Economía, Fomento y Turismo, y que sigue las directrices sugeridas por hermanos de Onlo y el Community Innovation Survey, que se utiliza también allá en Europa y en este tipo de investigación. La base de datos es de tipo transversal y se obtiene a partir de 4 oleadas de las encuestas desarrolladas. Cada una se desarrolla entre un periodo bienal entre el 2013 y el 2020. En total son aproximadamente 23.000 empresas. La variable utilizada, y aquí dividimos como variables las dependientes, independientes asociadas a investigación, desarrollo e innovación, independientes asociadas a las características de la firma. Correspondiente ya al análisis descriptivo, nos podemos dar cuenta de que para las distintas oleadas ahí se puede visualizar cuál es el porcentaje de innovación, pero ya diferenciado. Esto quiere decir cuál corresponde a la innovación del producto, proceso, marketing, organizacional y social, que es la tipología que yo utilizo para desarrollar este estudio. Y también el porcentaje de financiación pública que utiliza en cada una de estas oleadas. Y aquí nos centramos ya en la solicitud de financiación pública y el tipo de innovación desarrollada y el porcentaje de empresas que innovaron según cada tipología y que utilizaron innovación pública. Y ahí nos podemos dar cuenta que el 11% de las empresas innovadoras que realizan innovación en producto utilizan financiación pública. Por otro lado, aquellas que solicitaron financiación pública, yo dividí las que recibieron ayuda pública y las que no recibieron ayuda pública. Y esto es alrededor del 54% de las que solicitan financiación, reciben financiación para desarrollar innovación en cada una de esas tipologías. Nuestro modelo, como yo les comentaba, es un modelo trietápico, en donde dividimos en 3 fases, en donde inicia nuestro modelo mediante la formulación de la ecuación de solicitar ayudas públicas, que son destinadas a la innovación. La segunda ecuación analiza ya la probabilidad de obtener esta ayuda pública, de aquellas que postularon. Todo ello se realiza mediante un modelo Hetman. Y finalmente la tercera etapa estiman la influencia que tiene la financiación pública en la probabilidad de innovar, y ahí utilizamos un probit multivariable. Utilizamos el modelo de Heckman en las dos primeras etapas para poder corregir el sesgo de selección, y que ya ha sido utilizado por diferentes autores en análisis similares. Como yo les comentaba, el modelo de la ecuación 1, ahí aparece la fórmula en donde nosotros podemos identificar la variable que nos interesa acerca de la propensión que tiene la empresa en solicitar la financiación pública, considerando también las distintas variables explicativas que se utilizan. Y en este caso, para la ecuación 1, nosotros utilizamos una variable de exclusión correspondiente a la percepción que tiene la empresa respecto a las principales barreras que tienen para realizar la innovación. ¿Por qué incluimos estas variables? Para poder también abordar, como yo les comentaba, el problema de la selección de muestras. Nuestra segunda ecuación, ya nuestra variable dependiente va a reflejar la asignación de la financiación pública de la empresa, y aquí nosotros incorporamos el win ratio que deriva de la ecuación anterior y que se incorpora en la ecuación de resultados, que es el modelo propuesto por Heckman. Y finalmente tenemos nuestra ecuación número 3, que es la variable interés asociada a la financiación pública, incorporando también las distintas variables que corresponden a la tamaño de la empresa, la venta, la antigüedad de la empresa, si exporta o no exporta, la cooperación que realiza con otras organizaciones, con instituciones de educación superior, etc. Con respecto a los resultados, nos podemos dar cuenta, considerando ya las dos primeras ecuaciones, que los determinantes de requerir financiación y de adjudicar la financiación pública las podemos ver en la siguiente imagen. Ahí nos podemos dar cuenta que para poder requerir a financiamiento público, cuáles son las variables que son importantes y que nosotros hemos podido demostrar es la cooperación que existen tanto con otras compañías, con otras empresas, como con instituciones de educación superior. También importante destacar que las barreras que las empresas perciben como en el caso de financiamiento propio o el financiamiento externo para desarrollar innovación, también influye en la solicitud de financiamiento público. Como respecto a las características de la empresa, la edad también tiene una influencia significativa de manera negativa, por tanto las empresas que son más jóvenes también tienden a hacer la solicitud de financiamiento público, las ventas por empleado, pertenecer al sector terciario y realizar alguna actividad exportadora. Por otro lado, la adjudicación a financiación pública también tiene unas variables asociadas a innovación que son determinantes, como por ejemplo el gasto de innovación que tiene la empresa, y también la cooperación a nivel nacional con respecto a las compañías, otras compañías, y la relación que tienen de cooperación con instituciones de educación superior. Nuestra tercera ecuación asociada a los fondos públicos para los diversos tipos de innovación, y aquí ya nosotros podemos demostrar nuestra hipótesis 1, en donde se indica que las fuentes públicas de financiación influencian positivamente el desarrollo de las diversas innovaciones empresariales, y aquí es de manera parcial porque podemos darnos cuenta de que el financiamiento público sí influencia positivamente, pero solo las innovaciones en procesos y las innovaciones organizacionales, y de manera negativa la innovación social. Por otro lado, las variables que están asociadas a desarrollo, innovación e investigación, podemos destacar que la asociada a contar con personal de investigación y desarrollo en las empresas, y también el gasto de innovación asociada al empleado, todas influencian de manera significativa y positiva para todos los tipos de innovación. Por otro lado, la cooperación, que ahí empieza a ser distintas, pues en algunos tipos de innovación influencian de manera significativa y en algunos de manera negativa. Podemos darnos cuenta de un resultado relevante que la cooperación con instituciones de educación superior para la innovación social tiene un valor significativo y positivo, pero de manera contraria para la innovación organizacional y de procesos. La cooperación con clientes también afecta de manera positiva en casi todas las innovaciones. Y finalmente la empresa, las empresas que son más jóvenes tienen mayor probabilidad de desarrollar los distintos tipos de innovación. Y otro factor que también es significativo es pertenecer al sector terciario. Nosotros hacemos una extensión en donde consideramos ya el impacto que tienen las innovaciones en producto, pero principalmente nos enfocamos en las innovaciones en productos que son nuevas para el mercado, ya que hay una diferenciación en que el valor 1 cuando son nuevas para el mercado y solo cuando no son nuevas para el mercado y son nuevas solo para la organización. Y aquí nosotros surge nuestra segunda hipótesis, que las fuentes públicas de financiación fomentan las innovaciones de productos que son nuevas para el mercado, o sea, que podrían ser un poco más radicales. Y aquí nos podemos dar cuenta en esta imagen que la financiación pública no afecta el desarrollo de introducción de nuevos productos en mercados, pero sí las variables vuelven a repetirse, que son las aquellas asociadas a innovación, desarrollo e investigación, tanto contar con personal de investigación y desarrollo como el gasto que se desarrolla, o sea, el gasto de innovación. También afectan de manera positiva. De igual manera se repite que la empresa afecta de manera negativa el desarrollo de introducir innovaciones nuevas para el mercado. Dentro de las principales conclusiones nos podemos dar cuenta que los resultados indican que la decisión de las organizaciones de postular a distintos fondos públicos está influenciada porque ellas comprendan los obstáculos financieros que existen, o sea, que ellas tienen empresas que perciben como obstaculizadores financieros, que los reconocen, tienen mayor probabilidad de solicitar financiación pública. Por tanto, es fundamental que se logre comunicar de manera efectiva las estrategias gubernamentales que existen y las ayudas disponibles para poder superar esta barrera. Y acá no solo facilitará una mayor participación en los programas de financiación, que es lo que se busca aquí en Chile, sino que también potenciará el impacto de las inversiones públicas en la innovación de las empresas. La cooperación es una variable relevante tanto para el acceso como para la adjudicación de financiación pública, pero principalmente la colaboración entre las empresas y entre las empresas y las instituciones de educación superior. Y acá hay un papel relevante en este proceso, ya que iniciativas de este tipo permiten facilitar la transferencia de conocimientos, recursos y capacidades que son necesarias para el desarrollo de la innovación. Considerando además que el promover un entorno que sea colaborativo no solo optimiza las oportunidades de financiación, sino que también se fortalece el ecosistema de innovación en su conjunto. Con respecto a contar con personal de investigación y desarrollo y el gasto en la actividad de innovación por empleado está directamente relacionado también con la mayor probabilidad de obtener fondos. La financiación pública ejerce un efecto positivo y significativo tanto para la innovación en procesos como la innovación organizacional. Y un impacto negativo se puede encontrar en la innovación social, quiere decir, a medida que las empresas reciben financiación pública, la probabilidad de que desarrollen innovación social disminuye. El uso de fuentes de financiación plantea un desafío para las políticas gubernamentales, y en mayor instancia también afecta a las pymes debido a las limitaciones financieras que éstas presentan. Y acá un tema relevante que es tan importante no solo financiar el desarrollo e innovación, sino generar entornos o un ecosistema de innovación que permita y que abarque también políticas, difusión de conocimiento, transferencia, capital humano calificado, la creación de redes, educación en STEM, entre otros. Las políticas fiscales fomentan el desarrollo de innovación, siendo los incentivos fiscales como una de las mejores estrategias para fomentarlas a corto plazo. Por otro lado, nos dimos cuenta que el fomento de la universidad en las carreras STEM, en este caso de manera particular para Chile, ya está siendo impulsado con distintos proyectos que se adjudicaron a partir del año pasado, que están asociados a innovación, principalmente tanto los proyectos de Ingeniería 2030 como Ciencia 2030 al interior de la universidad, para fomentar el acceso también de las carreras STEM. Importante es también entender cómo las ayudas públicas afectan a los diferentes tipos de innovación. Para ello, y va a permitir diseñar políticas o programas que sean efectivos, ya sea implicar el diseño de nuevos instrumentos o el ajuste de los existentes para que pueda responder mejor a las necesidades de la empresa, comprendiendo todo el contexto anterior. Continuar con el fomento mediante las políticas públicas para promover colaboraciones entre el sector público, entre el sector privado y la institución de educación superior, de manera que se pueda combinar o utilizar recursos, conocimiento y también compartir los riesgos. A futuro sería interesante realizar un estudio longitudinal para poder evaluar el impacto de las innovaciones en el transcurso del tiempo, debido a que en Chile hay poca o ninguna evaluación de los efectos de los programas gubernamentales para poder financiar la innovación en las empresas. Muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you very much, Paula. We have now time for the discussion by Brenda.
Good morning. Good morning. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you very much for your presentation, and also I don't have your paper, but I'm going to give you the comments based on the discussion, and I hope that the comments are helpful, and in the future, if you do have the paper to share, I would be more than willing to review it more thoroughly. So I think your topic, first of all, I think it's a really great topic that focuses on describing the characteristics of Chilean companies in applying public financing, the factors which influence whether Chilean companies receive it, and the extent to which receiving financing advances these different types of innovations. I think you did a very nice job, especially I particularly liked how you tied your results into the policy implications, because I think that those have real world translational value in informing how to shape policy decisions within the companies. So some of my suggestions, I'm just going to give you some broad overarching comments that I hope would help guide you as you work on your paper. The first comment, I think in terms of your research objective, I think that it was, it could have been clarified a little bit. So starting with an overarching research aim and then tying in with each specific objective and how it relates to your different analyses. I think when I was reading seeing your presentation, the analyses were could have been a little bit more clear with how they relate to the results. And then in terms of the methodology, I guess I'm sure that in your paper you're going to expand upon it, but I had some questions regarding the data set itself. So for example, well, actually I did see that in this you updated it since you sent me, but one of my key questions was the key variables of interest in your study. I think in the original slide deck that I received, it was not entirely clear which variables were the dependent, which made it a little bit difficult to follow along with the methods, which I do think you were able to clarify in this presentation. But in your main paper, I would say to clearly delineate what those variables are and how they were operationalized. And another thing, in terms of the data management, that was also could have been expanded. Again, I just have the slide deck for the presentation, so I'm sure you probably go into it in more detail in your paper. But I would encourage you to clarify how you analyzed the data. For example, I saw that you had 4 survey periods. Did you do that separately? Make that more clear up front. And then finally, in terms of the literature review, again, since I don't have the paper, but I think looking at your slide decks, it was, I think that in terms of the framing, it was a bit unclear what the research gap is, in particular as it relates to Chilean companies. I did notice that you did mention, though, that in your paper you're going to have, you have three areas of research, but I would definitely try to clarify that more thoroughly in your paper as to how exactly it ties into your research lab, because I think it was a bit unclear for me. And other minor comments, just for the presentation, just ensuring that the language being consistent. I'm assuming this is going to be in English, and then also in terms of your tables, the table should stand alone, so spelling out the acronyms.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Do you want to answer, Paula?
Sí, claro, yo la presentación que le envié a Brenda, yo como estaba viendo ahora la presentación anterior, dije, yo la voy a explicar, pero claro, al momento de enviarle a Brenda no especifiqué ciertas cuestiones, como por ejemplo la hipótesis, las variables, porque yo la iba a explicar en la presentación. Entonces, por eso me faltaron alguna información, habérselas enviado en su momento a Brenda y no ser tan escueta en la cantidad de información que coloqué en la presentación inicial. Pero claro, ahí comencé a agregar información durante la presentación anterior, que dije esto es necesario para que puedan lograr entender un poquito más, por ejemplo, la incorporación de la hipótesis y la incorporación de las distintas variables, para que se pudiera entender a qué se refería las fórmulas que yo había presentado en la presentación inicial, y claramente en el artículo es donde se explica en mayor detalle todo lo anterior. Y si bien en la literatura utilizo estas 3 temáticas, dentro de estas 3 temáticas se hace el análisis completo de subtemas también asociado a toda la literatura existente. Bueno, eso con respecto a las 3 áreas, claro, el tema de la gestión de los datos, en el artículo que sí ahí tengo como en mayor detalle toda la información de la base de datos, las variables, la explicación de por qué se utiliza cada una de las variables. Principalmente, como yo lo mencionaba, son variables que nosotros tomamos 3 tipos: las variables dependientes, que son requerir financiamiento público, adjudicar el financiamiento público, para el último, la extensión de análisis, innovación en productos que son nuevas para el mercado, y la financiación pública para nuestra tercera ecuación, que es la que nosotros buscamos con respecto a los modelos. Después tenemos las variables asociadas a innovación, investigación y desarrollo, que es el financiamiento, el gasto de actividades de innovación, el gasto, si cuenta o no cuenta con personal de investigación y desarrollo. Después tenemos asociadas las colaboraciones nacionales, que son colaboraciones nacionales con organizaciones, con instituciones de educación superior. Principalmente esas son las que más afectan, y también tenemos variables que son características de la empresa, como el tamaño, las ventas por empleados, si pertenecen al sector terciario, si exporta,
financieras para poder acceder a la innovación, que es una pregunta que se hace en la encuesta de innovación, que se le indica si considera que existen barreras para desarrollar innovación, principalmente barreras que son financieras. Esas son con respecto a las variables.
También una sugerencia, the assumptions also might be helpful to clarify upfront what your assumptions are also, and then also in your variable selection, perhaps when you do your literature review, just to set the stage for why you selected those variables as well, just to clarify that as you're writing the paper, that might help the reader to understand the decision behind which variables you selection, and also help with the assumptions behind your models.
Okay, thank you both. Is there any more questions from the audience here at home? I may just have to consider whether the industry mix may drive your results, or whether, depending on the composition of sectors that may, let's say, have an effect. I don't know whether you are controlling by industry or not. Yeah, you are. So just to consider that. Okay, so if we don't have no additional questions, let's make a break. We have now a coffee break only for